Right, everybody, if you can mute yourself, Beverly, you can mute everybody. I'm, and then we're going to go ahead. This meeting has. We see the recording is going on now.
She's been
Thank
gone.
you,
She's been out of the office for a minute, and they don't have that protection in their
Sandra. Could you go ahead and put yourself on mute, please? Thank you. We're calling the meeting to order. The time is 10 o'clock this morning. 10 o'clock this morning. I thank all y'all for being in attendance to our meeting. We're going to start our meeting off with the inspiration. And this might be my last time being in charge, so therefore I'm going to go ahead and do the inspiration. I asked Miss Malden if she didn't mind if I did the inspiration, and she didn't have an issue or problem, and so I want to go ahead and give us inspiration point this morning.
Thank you,
Just
Mr.
want,
Chairman.
yeah, thank you, Beverly.
Did you want me to go ahead and fall into roll call?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. Let's go into the roll call. I apologize.
No problem. Thank
That's why
you.
you here for us.
Yes, sir. All righty. Good morning, everyone. Chairman Jones,
I am present.
Dr. O'Halloran,
Present.
Mr. Cody,
Here.
Mr. Emister,
Present.
Mr. Leggett,
Present.
Mr. Lakakis, and I placed them on mute, so let me unmute Mr. Lakakis. Okay, I'm missing his name.
We'll go ahead and take the note that he is here. We heard him earlier on the call.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Robinson,
Present.
Ms. Stone,
Present.
Ms. Odell.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dumas, for always keeping us on task and always keeping us abreast of what we need to be doing. Now we'll have the inspirational moment. And I'm gonna start the inspirational moment with this kind of conversation here. The Transit Act of 1986, the Chatham County Transit Act requires bus and transit service to be provided. And I think I am quoting this verbatim throughout the district on a reasonable basis. In 2020, we have to be astute in how we promote our business, activism, ideals, and events. This isn't criticism. This is a coaching moment. Effective organizations understand there are key people that need to be in place. Elected leaders, community leaders, clergy, news media, and especially the audience of people tied to the subject matter at hand. Most of these individuals have emails, text message systems, social media platforms, telephones, cell phone, and some people still have landlines, believe it or not. Some have assistants, clerks, or secretaries to help disseminate the information even quicker in this day and age. A list should be developed based on a grouping and should be biased to create transparency and accountability for all stakeholders. Also, understanding the hierarchy structure of the organization prevents misunderstanding of who should and shouldn't be the spokesperson when limited time permits for representation to give salutation. Chatham Area Transit, let's help each other set the bar high in our community. We have a fight for justice, equality, and fairness for all to obtain the best transit system that we can ever provide. The vision is not of us, but of the enemy. Let the enemy know that we are not divided moving forward. Strength comes in our numbers, and the fight will have progress moving forward. So in closing, I want to leave us with 3 thoughts that we cannot become. We can no longer say that we cannot provide service. No service is an option that we cannot give. The other piece is we cannot be a one-size-fits-all organization. It is not one size fits all. We have different components and different people that we need to accommodate for, and we have to make sure that we get everybody in our market available. And the last point is we can't have the mind frame of a Best Buy. making sure that we get the best buy of something is not the attitude we should have. We should always make sure we're thought in what we do out there in this community, and making sure that we're not just doing the best by, but we're doing the best for the community. And I'll leave it at that. And so now we'll go into the approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes. We have the regular meeting from July 27th, 2020, and we have the special call meeting from August the 11th of 2020. Do all the directors have the minutes on hand to be reviewed? Is there any readiness to the minutes? All right, I'll entertain a motion if there's no unreadiness.
I so move.
All right, it's been moved
Second.
and it's been seconded. It's been probably moved and seconded to accept the minutes. Is there any questions to it? All those in favor of accepting the minutes as read, speak aye, and you can do a roll call. She can do a roll call.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
That's you, Jay.
Dr. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Director Cody,
Yes.
Director Emister,
Yes.
Director Leggett,
Dietrich, Leggett,
Yes.
thank you, sir. Director Lakakis, Director Robinson,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Motion
right.
carries.
Next, we'll have a presentation. We have 2 presentations on the agenda. We have the first presentation, property and indemnity and whole insurance overview from Seacrest. And we have a COVID-19 policy overview. I saw them practicing it earlier today. Are y'all ready to go ahead and present?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. This is Erica Franklin, Director of Safety Training and Environmental Services. I was going to give a quick introduction for you before I pass the ball over to Miss Cindy Robinette.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you, sir. This morning we have a board action item for our marine insurance services renewal. And we also have a presentation, a very brief presentation from Miss Cindy Robinette. She's with our brokerage firm, Sterling Seacrest Partners. And I'm going to pass the floor over to Miss Robinette now. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you all. If I can get the right screen up. And let's see.
We'll accept the dog if need be.
Sorry about that. Are you, let's see. Are you able to, I guess you're not able to see my screen yet. My apologies.
Yes, we see the screen. Are you trying to put it in the slideshow view?
The slide, okay,
Just click, I guess, from the beginning.
from the beginning,
There
and
you go. It should come up.
doesn't seem to want to work. Hang on. My apologies to everyone here.
No problem. Did you click the forward button?
Let's try it one more time. Meeting controls, share screen.
I think it thinks that the Zoom screen is a separate screen, as if you had 2 screens
I agree.
and it would
Okay.
split up your presentation. So if there's an option to have it condensed onto one, it might help.
All
But
right. Does,
works for me in the way it is. I can see it.
can you all see it now?
No, ma'am. If you go back to the first one and just go ahead and click it through the I guess the main PowerPoint function. If anybody has any questions, we'll make sure the presentation gets out to everybody.
Ms. Robinette, I'll be glad to pull the screen up from my side if that's okay.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay.
Let me know when you have it up and if I should start.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Bless you.
Okay,
There
I'm
we
ready
go.
when you
We're
are.
rolling.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so last month we presented the property and casualty insurance renewal. And this month, this is the marine or protection and indemnity insurance renewal. And if you'll just go to the next slide, I thought it would be useful to give you all just a brief overview of what it is we're talking about with regard to the marine coverage, protection and indemnity, and what it covers. Basically, it's insurance that's designed to cover the marine liability risk associated with the CAT ferry boats, the operation and ownership of the ferries. And it provides insurance coverage for third-party claims, for injuries to passenger and crew, as well as liabilities that might result because of a collision of the ferry boats or the cost to remove wreckage or damage to any other objects. In addition to the third-party liability coverage, the policy includes insurance to cover the vessel itself, the hull, for physical damage. And then we also have coverage within the policy for accidents or injuries that occur on the docks or the gangways that are used for loading and unloading the CAT ferry boats. And again, we do cover the crew. There is some coverage under this policy, as well as the workers' compensation policy that was renewed last month, depending upon where the accident occurs. So if you'll move on to the next one, the physical damage portion covers each of the vessels. And as you see, there are 4, and we have each of them, the first 3 valued a little over $1 million, and the Mary Musgrove increased in value from improvements last year to $2.2 million. As far as what's covered, I thought it would be of interest to put some of the insured perils. You know, marine law goes back to to London and the Lloyd's Coffee House, and English common law is still used in the policy language. So you'll see, if you actually looked at the policy, interesting coverage for restraints and detainment of kings, princes, and peoples. It's actually a very broad coverage. In addition to the traditional common law perils, there's a clause called an inch-marie clause that adds additional coverage for accidents in loading and unloading. But again, it's all form of English common law. So we don't control that. That's what the market brings to you, but very broad coverage. Next slide, please. I thought it would be useful to give the board a perspective of the historical premium and also some of the claims activity as a basis for the premium. As you can see, the premium has been right around 100,000 annually up until, you know, the last couple years. We did increase the values on the one vessel significantly, so that caused the jump in premium from 18 to 19. The last 3 years, CAT has had very, very good loss experience. In the 16-17 year, you know, there was some significant loss activity, which has generated a sizable loss ratio. So if you look at the premium that's been paid over the last 5 years, there have been more paid out in terms of claims and losses than taken in premium. So if you'll go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about our marketing activity. IMU, International Marine Underwriters Atlantic Specialty, is the insurance carrier that's been writing this coverage for the last 5 years. Even with some of the loss activity, they did present a reasonable renewal quote. It does have a 7.2% premium increase, but that's largely because of the loss ratio. In the other markets that we went to, either could not be competitive or they couldn't write the gangs or the gangways or the docks. So we are recommending Atlantic Specialty for the renewal. And if you think about, you know, the property casualty and overall market is deteriorating, the marine market is too. And most renewals coming in 2020, even with good loss experience, are ranging from 10 to 20% increases. So that gives you a benchmark of where CAT's renewal is coming in. And on the last slide, I believe we have the actual premium for the renewal. The second column is the expiring premium, which totals $132,000. Renewal premium, which we're quoting and we're asking for this board's approval to move forward, is at the $142,026. And again, that represents a 7.2% premium increase. And that's all that I really had to present. I'm happy to answer any questions. As always, we appreciate the opportunity to assist you all with the placement of this coverage.
All right. Are there any questions from the directors? All right, not having any, this will be one of the items that will be on the consent agenda. So if we have any questions, if we need to pull it off, hopefully we don't, but it will be on the consent agenda. All right, with that being said, we're going to this next item, which is the COVID-19 policy overview. Are we ready for that presentation? All right.
Yes, sir.
You have the floor. You have the floor, Mr. Stearns.
Thank you.
And while he's getting that together, thank you, Seacrest, for the presentation. I appreciate y'all taking the time to be with us this morning. It is a privilege to make sure that y'all have this presentation so we can know exactly what's going on within our agency. And it's good to know that we've had 3 good years of track service going on through our insurance. So that was the one piece that I got to see.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll sign off now, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Stearns, you have the floor now. Did I give you enough time?
You did.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you. So within the consent agenda, you'll notice that there's 2 COVID-19 policies. This slideshow will just kind of summarize those policies, but as also CAT's actual actions that we have been doing since about March. Right from the get-go, CAT started with a communications program for employees. We initiated town hall meetings, which were held weekly with CAT leadership. Safety briefings from Erica are included in these meetings, given kind of COVID-19 updates and protocols throughout the weekly meetings. And then Q&As with employees. So in addition to the town hall style meetings, we've been doing what we call e-briefs, which are blasting out information to all the CAT emails. And then following all this up with signage around CAT. The idea is we need to get as much communication out to our employees as possible, dealing with the dangers of COVID and proper protocols and things to be aware of. So our actions have started right with the most basic: employee safety and hygiene, washing hands, disinfecting high touch surfaces, increasing clean-ins, using vinyl oxide, basically just your kind of basic cold virus hygiene, but we're ramping up our efforts to inform employees with signage, with meetings, with e-briefs. We do have notice requirements if you're experiencing symptoms or awaiting test results, or a member of your household has COVID-19 or an exposure there too. You got to inform HR so that they can take the appropriate steps. We require face coverings in all common areas and within 6 feet of one another for employees. And we have been putting in place things like PPE, various other mitigating factors. So screening and testing protocols, we have health screening questions upon entering CAT's facilities. Many people are familiar with these. These are the 3 or 4 questions you'll get hit with when you enter a door. At the same time, they're taking temperature. So everyone gets their temperature taken, everyone gets their screening questions, and everyone's wearing a mask upon entering a CAT facility. Social distancing and frequently touched objects, like I mentioned before, we're doing the 6 feet apart. We do that in our office. So sometimes we have to stagger schedules in order to maintain 6 feet because we're a little tight in some office spaces. But this also extends to our buses. We're doing every other seat kind of seat-in. We're doing rear door boarding, 50% capacity. These are some mitigating measures that the board has been made aware of. At CAT, we're doing no work travel. We're teleworking when possible. And we have discontinued visitors at this point and narrowed it down to very critical vendors only on campus. So, you know, the delivery of the fuel, we have to have that. So those vendors come on, but it's very critical vendors only at this point. So what happens, what do we do if there's a positive case for COVID? Well, we have various protocols in place, but the main thing we do, and this is why HR needs to be notified, is we do what's called contact tracing. Notify any employee that we're exposed to COVID or the positive individual. We provide testing information, so go to the Civic Center, go here. We make sure every CAT employee knows that our group health insurance does cover testing, but even if you don't have insurance, you can still get free testing. And then we deep clean work areas with vital oxide foggers, and we've actually brought on a vendor that's certified in COVID-19 cleaning. So they'll do a very deep clean of an affected area. And then last thing, we notify the health department. Excuse me. So after there has been a COVID-19 exposure, the question is, how do you return to work? Well, it depends on the type of exposure. Excuse me. If there's a if there are symptoms, excuse me a second.
And I can actually jump in at this point. At this point, we will talk about the response actions that are continued. Basically, after COVID-19 exposure, if there's no known exposure and you had symptoms, we ask that you return to work after 14 days. If you, an exposure basically means, and we have had to really drill down into what the definition of exposure means. That's being within 6 feet of someone with COVID-19 for greater than 15 minutes. Of course, everyone is concerned about COVID. And so, you know, people think that if just because you pass somebody in the hallway for 2 seconds, that means that they've been exposed, and that is not necessarily the case. And so we have worked very hard to get the correct definition of what exposure means. And that basically, again, that's within 6 feet of someone with COVID-19 for greater than 15 minutes. Or if you've traveled to a CDC restricted area, we ask that you quarantine for 14 days after coming home. Go to the next slide. And so then our Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA creates 2 new paid leave requirements. The first one under that is the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. That provides 80 hours of sick pay to employees to quarantine, or if they're under a quarantine or isolation order, if they're self-quarantining, if they have COVID-19 symptoms and they're seeking a test or a diagnosis, if they're caring for someone that is suffering from COVID or under one of those prior categories, or if they're caring for a child whose school or daycare is closed, or any other similar situation that is related to COVID. Next slide. So the Extended Family and Medical Leave Act, which is the EFMLA, it lasts for at least 30 days. It allows the use of 12 weeks of FMLA benefits to care for a dependent under the age of 18 whose school or daycare is closed during COVID-19. And that's only available if traditional FMLA benefits are still available. And the first 2 weeks of that coverage is unpaid. And then of course, the last 10 weeks are at 2/3 of regular pay. Next slide. And that basically concludes the presentation. We just wanted to give the board an overview of what the agency has been proactively doing in terms of our response to COVID. Unfortunately, it's going to be with us for the foreseeable future, and we just want the board to be aware of what policies and procedures we're following in order to ensure that we have the safest workplace possible for our employees, and the safest service possible for the community. And this concludes that report.
All right, thank you for the report. Are there any questions that we have from the directors?
Yeah, I have one quick question.
You have,
Since Georgia is considered a hotspot now, isn't everybody basically in that zone?
I'm going to actually defer to Ms. Tondra Scott, our Director of HR, to talk a little bit more about our protocols. I don't, if you were on the call earlier, I know she joked me a little bit about questions that we get asked when we enter the building, because of course, I was not going to dare be late for the board meeting. But we have a trained group of light duty employees that are asking those questions, and I'll let her elaborate more on that response.
So hello, everyone. Yes, we have medical screeners that are in, and they ask all the questions. And if someone comes up and say that they have been, well, if they have a temperature, then of course, we will send them home. If temperature's 104 or more, we will send them home. But these questions are asked to everyone as they come through the door to make sure that we are, that they have not been exposed. And those questions are, have you been 6 feet? And as the presentation says, are you wearing your mask? Are you being careful? Because as you said, it is a hot spot here, but we are coming to work and we are still, trying to move forward, but we have to catch those employees that are exposing themselves by asking the proper questions.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
all right, are there any additional questions? And this item is tied to about 3 or 4 items on the consent agenda. So are there any questions with this? And David, did you get some water? You good? I'll make sure you're okay.
I did. Thank you. Thanks to Bakar for being able to jump in there too.
Yes, sir. All right, so with that being said, we're moving on to the consent agenda items. Basically, like I stated last month, we want to move toward having a consent agenda, and that will hopefully help help speed the meeting up. But without going into full discussion, are there any items that a director wants to pull off the consent agenda so we can discuss it as an individual item? Are there any items that we want to discuss as individual items? And before we even go into that, what I'll ask is, Beverly, if you can read the 11 items on the consent agenda, so therefore we have a clear understanding, and I'll entertain that question after she reads it, Clinton, if possible. That way she can read it, and then we'll entertain those questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. We have the property indemnity and hull renewal, which is our marine insurance renewal, extension of COVID-19 emergency measures. 3, extension of CEO measures authority. 4, naval engineering and design service contract amendment. 5, IFB issuance for Susie King Taylor Rehabilitation Services. 6, RFP issuance for legal services and representation. 7, process development policy. 8, COVID-19 response policy. 9, FFCRA policy. 10, telework policy. 11, support vehicle award amendment.
All
That's
right.
the consent agenda items, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Dumas. And those 11 items were read, and I ensured last week, I got you, Clinton. I ensured last week that I made sure that it was sent out to all board members so they can have a preview of it early on if they had any questions to contact the CEO. Because we want to be transparent and we want to be accountable for what our actions are. Clinton, you have the floor.
I'd like to pull item 7.
All right. Item 7 has been pulled. It will be added to the action calendar. Is there anything else that wants to be pulled and added to the action calendar? All right. So item number 7 is the only item we will be pulling. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Approve.
All right, it's been approved by Alderman Leggett. Can I get a second? Stone, could you?
Second.
All right, and Director Stone seconded. Are we ready for the question? Any
Hey,
discussion?
Pete came in on the phone line. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I did see it. Pete, do you have anything to say?
Mr. Lakakis, just click on *6.
No, I'm still listening right now. And of course, it's a good thing that it has been presented, you know, so that we can all pick it up.
Thank you, Pete. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and do a roll call, please. Beverly?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Director Cody,
Yes.
Director Edmister,
Yes.
Director Leggett,
Yes.
Director Lakakis,
Yes.
Dr. Robinson,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the consent agenda has been approved. We're
Motion
moving to the action item calendar. Please put note that we have 2 items on the action item calendar. The first one is the Intelligent Transportation System Contract Award, and the second item is now the Process Development Policy. All right, and so are you ready to go ahead and give us the first item, Mr. Stearns?
Yes, this item seeks approval from the board to grant a contract for an ITS system to Clever Devices in the amount of $2,528,823. The funding for this item will be 80% FTA and 20% match is being provided by local SPLOST.
All right, with that being stated, are there any questions in reference to the Intelligent Transportation System Contract Award? All right, well, we'll go ahead and get a motion to approve and everything so we can get to discussion. Can I get a motion for that one?
So moved.
It's been properly and seconded. Any unreadiness or questions or conversation about it?
I'm taking a quick look just so I don't lose my place. If I remember correctly, this is part of the FTA funding was made possible by cooperation with the MPC. Is that correct? Yeah. Could we just, I'd like to just get that on the record for the minutes. If anybody was watching, I think that's a great example of synergy and collaborating with like-minded partners around land use and transit for the benefit of this community to an 80% degree, which I think is great. So if anybody wants to kind of like explain to us a little bit more about that process, I'd really enjoy that.
Sure. The 20% match is provided by SPLOST, and then the staff will designate a combination of FTA 5339 program funds and MPC M301 and Z230 equipment funds for this project. So it is a combination of FTA funding and MPC funding, as well as the local match with SPLOST.
Excellent. I'm very excited about this.
Anything else, Director Edminster?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else has any questions from a director perspective? All right. With that being said, let's go ahead with the roll call of the vote.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Dr. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Director Cody,
Yes.
Director Edmister,
Yes.
Director Leggett,
Yes.
Director Lakakis,
Yes.
Dr. Robinson,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman Jones.
Yes,
Thank you. Unanimous, sir.
thank you. All right, our next item, for action item has been pulled on the, is one item to pull off the consent agenda, the process development policy. Are y'all ready to discuss that?
We are.
Okay, y'all have the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the first tasks that we assigned to the Chief Administrative Officer was the development of a policy and procedures manual. This item basically is one of the foundational policies of that policy manual, which establishes a formal process for how policies are established within the organization. I'll turn it over to David if he wants to add something else. Mr. Stearns wants to add something else to that.
No, that's, Bakar basically summarized it exactly right. So this is just to have the one document that everyone can go to when they say we need a policy. This tells you how to make the policy, the process for getting it approved, and how it's even going to look. So the idea is to create uniformity so that you can have an expectation for everyone understanding, okay, this is a policy, this is how it was created, this is the format we use. And that will allow us as an organization, I think, to be more organized and capable of handling any sort of growing issues that we're likely to experience as we get bigger and more complicated.
All right, so with that being said, can we get a motion, put it on the table, and then we'll entertain any questions from the directors?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved in second. Any questions out there? Did we answer your question, Mr. Edminster?
I'm just to kind of play with this a little bit more. So it's not just policies, it's programs, plans, policies, procedures, SOPs, and codes, which seems to be, and again, I think this is really cool. I just want to make sure I've got a good idea of what we're doing here. This would cover really any process that CAT writes on paper, really any process at all, or any, I mean, I think this is just, this one to me, I wanted to pull it out because it seems fundamentally important to the rest of the, the future of CAT, more so than anything else on this agenda or any of our agendas, maybe ever. But I think it really could be quite helpful with organizing us a lot more. We haven't had something like this in place though?
Not to my knowledge and my searching of the system, no.
That makes sense. Ms. Malden, it also seems this sort of rhymes with how our board agendas are looking now as well, where we receive a board agenda item and it's got subject, description, action request, which I personally find really helpful because that does set up an expectation. I can figure out where I'm going to look for my financial information. I can see what sort of request the staff wants. So this sounds good. Is there anything that you think that us board members should be aware of with this document?
No, it just provides the fundamental groundwork for, I guess, rules of engagement for how we go about creating policies. We are really seeking to have more of a structured environment in terms of how we create policies, who can create policies, and the like, that just kind of govern our actions going forward.
All right.
Thank you.
Director Edminster, you good? All right. Any other director have any unreadiness? All right. Without any unreadiness, can we go ahead and get a roll call vote? And Beverly, let me get this correct. Did you get who placed the first and the second, the motion in the second on this? Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we have Mr. Edminster who moved and Director Stone who second.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Go ahead and do your roll call vote.
Okay. Dr. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Director Cody,
Yes.
Director Edminster,
Yes.
Director Leggett,
Yes.
Director Lakakis,
Yes.
Dr. Robinson,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you, unanimous, sir.
thank you. Now we'll move into our executive director's reports. And I'm gonna turn it over to you, Ms. Malden, to handle all the reports, and you can bring on whoever you need to bring on to handle those subjects. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We are continuing to move forward with implementing the SCORE plan. So if you will notice, the executive director's written report is in the format of SCORE. So we've changed the format of that report, actually. And so under stabilizing and strengthening the agency's finances, as you are aware, CAT is currently navigating the rough waters of a budget shortfall that COVID-19 exacerbated. We received CARES Act funding a week ago of approximately $10.7 million. And we got it so fast thanks to our pre-existing relationship with FTA Region 4 and the hard work of Ms. Brenda Dice, who is our newly appointed grants administrator. Due to those efforts, we were able to get those funds obligated in record time, as well as Gloria Royal and the finance department. And so as a result, we've taken the following actions since the receipt of those funds. The $1.5 million line of credit has been paid off, and the agency reserve fund has been replenished by $4 million. The Ray Michelle Group, led by Ms. Jeray Williams, continues to assist our finance department and continues to provide analysis to us. You will hear more from Ms. Williams during our financial update. The Jacksonville Transit Authority, JTA, their finance team is on site to continue the financial assessment and audit of our finances. They will also be recommending best practices that are utilized throughout the transit industry. And we are certainly grateful for the partnership that we have been afforded by the Jacksonville Transit Authority, led by Mr. Nat Ford, their CEO. We're happy to have Trey Scott and the Malden and Jenkins firm present on site, no relation, of course, to do our annual audit. They did present earlier this month at the Monitoring and Performance Audit Committee. And so we appreciate their participation in that as well. In terms of the security protocols, you heard quite a bit about our agency's response to COVID. If any of you all happen to visit us at CAT Central or at the ITC, you will notice that our security protocols have been enhanced even more. And that's basically to continue our vigilant efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the workplace. On Monday, August 17th, 2020 at 6:45, we hosted a virtual ribbon cutting for our virtual call center. So thanks so much to Commissioner Jones and to Commissioner Stone, as well as to Savannah Mayor Van Johnson for their participation in that program. We were really delighted to have so much community support during that event. And we're excited about taking yet another step to keep our employees safe during this time of COVID, as well as continuing to meet the needs of our community. Our systems development team, led by Ms. Patricia, actually did a wonderful job in putting the event together and coordinating those efforts, as well as the mobility management team led by Bridget Morrison, and the call center, which was led by Ms. Ashley. Of course, with change and coming in as a new CEO, organizations will undergo staffing changes. So here we grow again. Our former Chief Operating Officer, Michael Brown, did resign effective August 11th, 2020. And Mr. Enoch Dumas has been appointed Chief Entering Operation Officer until a replacement has been selected and appointed. And of course, as I mentioned, Ms. Brenda Dice has been reclassified as the agency's grant administrator. In terms of the senior leadership team, we've created a policy command group to continue to implement our hurricane policy. As I understand from all of the locals, we are entering the more active time for Savannahans in hurricane season. So we're continuing through the efforts of Ms. Erica Franklin to monitor all of the storm activity, but we are especially watchful for things that impact us on the Atlantic as well. As we optimize our operations, we did put a task force together to study the 100X airport shuttle, and you'll hear some additional information about that as well a little later in the agenda. And that was in response to Commissioner Stone's inquiry about the 100X airport shuttle. We are going to make some service and staff reductions a little later as well. And we're working on those, on fine tuning those recommendations so that we can bring back the solid recommendation to the board. It's something that we really don't take lightly because of course it's impacting the lives of our customers as well as the employees that are impacted. And so that's something we truly don't take lightly. In terms of reimagining transit in Chatham County, we had a meet and greet with the director of Federal Highway Region 4. His name is Mr. Moses Marrero. This meeting was graciously set up by the FTA Region 4 Administrator, Dr. Yvette Taylor. And during this meeting, we discussed ways to increase funding for our ferry program. We've been invited to make a presentation later this year at the Federal Highway office in Atlanta if the world opens up in time. And so we'll give you more information about that. And then lastly, engaging our board, employees, and stakeholders. We will continue to engage each of you in employee and board member wrap sessions as you are getting to know me as your CEO and I'm getting to know you as my bosses and the board members of the board. It's important that we get together one-on-one to share ideas, for me to hear your thoughts and your vision for this organization. Also be on the lookout. There'll be a 2-question survey that'll be going out to each of you all as well. And then lastly, we reference the employee town hall meetings. We will continue to do that. We are beginning to get great feedback, and those meetings have been a great tool for providing information to our employees, especially our frontline employees. And so that's just a brief overview of all of the information that was provided to you in your board packet. And from here, we can go into the unit updates if that is okay with the chair.
That is fine.
Okay. All right. First, we will have our service delivery update, which will be by Mr. Enoch Dumas.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Bakari. We have your service delivery update you find in your board packet, and that information is there if you have any questions. Most of the information I would have updated you on has already been covered extremely well by David Stern and Ms. Malden, so I don't have any additional updates to give you at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dumas. We will have our system development update by Ms. Patricia Harris-Moorhead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and board members. The system development team has another great report included in your board packet, and our focus continues to be on getting the right information to our customers at the right time so that they can have the information to ride our buses and cat mobility vans. Plus, we are continuing to work on telling the transit story better and more frequently and more consistently. We have included a fantastic board report in your packet. If you have any questions about any of that information in your packet, I will be happy to answer those questions.
Thank you, Ms. Patricia.
All right. I'm sorry. And then lastly, of course, we will have our financial update, which will be presented by Ms. Gloria Royal, our interim chief financial officer, and Mr. Ray Williams of the Ray Michelle Group, and it will include a presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to them. We received a lot of great feedback about the presentation that was made during the special call meeting. And as a result, we decided to keep that same format going forward as the new standard for how our financial information will be presented. So, Ms. Williams, Ms. Royal.
Good morning, everyone. As Jeray prepared to present the presentation, we'll give her a second to there.
Okay, can everyone hear me and see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So good morning, Mr. Chairman, and to the other board of directors that are participating today. I want to go through just a brief financial overview. Some of the slides you've seen from the last special call meeting, but there are some updates. So at the last special call meeting, I mentioned how CAT has operated at a net loss except for this past fiscal year, which was 2020. The net loss calculation that you see on this presentation does not account for the remaining bank balances at the end of the fiscal year, just the actual revenues and expenses recorded in a fiscal year. The dark blue represents the audited revenues and the green represents the audited expenses trends over time in the operating fund. The audited revenue trends vary in the earlier fiscal years, then start to trend upward. However, the audited expense trend line is more linear, increasing every fiscal year, with the audited revenue growth rate trend lagging the expenditure growth rate. The increases in expenses are primarily from wages and benefits, contributing to the $2.3 million monthly spend rate and 66% of the budget that's adopted for this year. So the top left and white quadrant is from the last presentation. What is different in this presentation is that the CARES Act grant has been received, and because it's been received, it kind of skews the August revenue cash flow projections, which was expected. So now the cash flow the cash flows revenues now reflect that, plus any of the changes with the special district tax, which there was a $614,000 decline that's projected for this fiscal year, and the fare free revenues that are zeroed out until collections resume. On the lower bottom right-hand side, the cash flow expenditures represent 66% from wages and benefits and the repayment of the $1.5 million line of credit. So these two graphics contrast the last fiscal year and the current, giving the board a guide to cash flow pre and post COVID-19. So in July 2020, revenues were 37% lower compared to last year, and expenditures were 25% higher this year compared to last year. Sans the CARES Act grant, the continuation of the organization's spend rate at this level may not be sustainable in the future if revenues do not achieve the same growth rate trend. Fiscal year 20 actual monthly cash flow net to fiscal year 21 shows the projected revenues and expenditures. However, this first chart includes the carry forward of the actual and projected bank balances. So as you will see, based on the CARES Act grant that was received in August, our expectation is that we would have $4.3 million at the end of June 2021. And if things continue to trend the same. Some of the factors that contributed to the revenues, obviously we already talked about the grant, and then the fiscal year 21 annual revenues without the grant is really 23.9 million. Last year, as I mentioned before, we did exceed budget by 1.95 million, and that was a net gain compared to the historical, which has been net losses. From the expenditures, fiscal year in 21 projected cash position without the grant would have been a negative 5.6 million. And then the other deviations was the $1.5 million line of credit and the draw from the $1.6 million draw from the Georgia Fund reserve count. So those two factors were part of the fiscal year 20 expenditures in revenues. This lower cash flow report or graph at the bottom is what the actual picture would have been without the carry forward balances. So as you see, if we didn't get the CARES Act grant, we would have run negative every month, except for the December, January timeframe when we get a large portion of the property tax revenues. But CAT does expect to end the fiscal year with a cash flow net gain, which is about 1.88 times in the bank balances. And then $4 million are already in the reserve account at Georgia Fund 1. So accounting overview. We talked about in the last meeting the differences between accrual and cash basis accounting. For your benefit and as a refresher, accrual accounting recognizes revenue when it's earned and expenditures when they're billed. So I classify that as the expectation of what an organization thinks the financial position and health of the for that fiscal year. And then cash accounting recognizes revenue when it is received or credited in the bank account, and expenditures when the cash is dispersed or debited. So that is the actual what happened. So for July, this was our actual net from the revenues and expenditures. Now, while the accrual base is represented on the statement of revenue and expenditures, which is a part of your board packet, gives the board an idea of your projected financials for the year, it does not provide the awareness of cash flow or cash on hand. So in today's packet, you should have the cash flow summary statement, which will be included going forward to give you the board a better understanding of both methods of comparison in the future. So presently, CAT does not have a financial reserve policy. This is definitely a best practice and industry best practice, not just for transit agencies, but municipal agencies and non-for-profit agencies, higher education institutions. So this slide highlights the recommended structure based on the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA for short, and the transit industry's best financial practices. It is recommended that the board adopts a formal policy establishing guidelines on how CAT would utilize their reserves and set thresholds for board approval if required. So I've identified a few areas, or at least several areas, for the board to think about as we develop this policy. So real quickly, policy guidance, how the funds will be used and for what purposes. Most times the fund balance is used to either supplement annual budget or capital projects. In some instances, legal claim settlements, if there are some that are of large amounts or that are unexpected. And then the next, mitigate risk, how to use the policy to supplement unforeseen risks. So for instance, if we had this policy in place, we could have been prepared for COVID or any other, uncertainty that could occur, that most organizations just don't anticipate. So COVID would have fell in that category, as well as, revenue shortfalls, political changes, and economic realities. When I think about economic realities, like 2008, when the downturn of the economy happened, there were hundreds of municipal organizations that experienced issues in their financials. Appropriate levels. So this determines the thresholds to maintain at any point in the fiscal year. For example, no more than 20% of the annual adopted operating budget would be used to support operations. And these are just kind of numbers I'm throwing out. This would be set with a consensus with the board and staff. Or 2 times would be the maintain reserves at a minimum. So that would mean that at any given time in the fiscal year, there would be 2 times or $4.6 million in the reserve fund, regardless of surpluses and losses. Use and replenishment. This defines how the funds are used, the time to replenish. For instance, if you take a withdrawal, what's the time period to repay that back? If it's within the fiscal year or calendar year, and at what level would the reserves be used based on risk? So for instance, if it's going to be used for a legal claim, would that have a maximum of $1 million from the reserve account, and so forth? Also, which funds would be used for these purposes? So operating grants or grant funds based on requirements. Governance ensures that CAT is just following proven and practical standards and reviewing the policy at least annually to ensure it reflects the most updated best practice. Also, the amounts that would require board approval. And then last, reserve monitoring, provide the board with monthly reporting using cash basis. And my recommendation would be that this would be the monthly statement from the reserve account, the Georgia Fund 1, that the board would get a part of their board packet as their regular scheduled meeting. And as Ms. Malden already mentioned, the spending plan, so the 1.5 million was used to pay off the line of credit. The Wells Fargo operating bank account, the average collective balance will remain at $3 million. And then the Georgia Fund 1 reserves, we have 1.74 times coverage. Currently, there's $4 million that was moved as of last week over to that account.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Williams. And again, we are very, very grateful to our federal partners at FTA for expediting the obligation of the CARES Act funding and making it available. But again, it did save the day, but that does not get us off the hook in terms of needing to still take preventative measures and tighten our belts so that we can make it during this unprecedented time. So I'll turn it back over with that to the chairman for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Molden. Thank you for all the presentations as far as unit updates are concerned within the organization. At this time, I see the Director O'Halloran had a question. Does anybody else have a question outside Dr. O'Halloran? All right, I leave the floor to Dr. O'Halloran. You have the floor, Dr. O'Halloran.
Okay, I have multiple questions actually, and I don't know who they're going to be directed at, probably Jure.
Just read them, brother. Read one at a
When
time.
you did your review of the expenses and revenues, how much of that would have been affected by the $6.2 million debt that we paid off from the Veolia contract? I understand we're 5.8 million in the hole and we paid them 6.2 million over the last 6 years, and every one of those years is showing a deficit.
So I'm not familiar with that contract. I can't answer that question because I don't know what that contract is. And
Well, we paid $1 million a month every year from 2013 through 2019. And every single year of that year, we have a deficit.
Dr. O'Halloran, this is Bakara Malden, of course. In the scope of what Ms. Williams was to look at, she did not look at the specifics in terms of what the actual line items were. She was strictly looking at the numbers and making an analysis based on the numbers for what was actually paid out. So I do not believe that she has sufficient information at this point to provide a clear answer to that question. That's a little outside of the scope of what she was contracting.
Okay, well, just to be aware,
just a second.
We have 5.8 million in debt and we paid off a loan of 6.2 million. So that appears to me to be the matching part of the debt. My second question is, with labor and insurance making up almost 75% of our costs, I don't see how we can continue as we're going if our millage rate stays the same as it has for the last 3 years. It's at 1.15. And I know we have commissioners on the board, but if our increases are going up, labor at 3% and insurance averaging between 7 and 12, I don't see how we can work with a maintaining of one level millage rate for the last 3 years. And I do know we decided probably 3 years ago, because the FTA recommended that we had 3 times our monthly expenses in reserve, which was 6.9 million. We've been trying to make some headway into that. We had it up to 1.6, but naturally COVID wiped that out, and we did expect to replenish that with the CARES Act funding, which we found out, I guess, in February or March would be the 10.778 million, whatever that was. So we had that in place. It's just how do we move forward and how do we get around finding other revenues? Because right now we're losing, what, 66,000 a week from our outside vendors who aren't paying us. So I think we're gonna have to do a lot of work to figure that all out, because the other option, as it always has been, is to cut service.
Yeah, so I would say, as I reviewed the historicals, and as Ms. Malden already said, I did not look at the line items. I looked at the categories kind of at the highest tier. So the wages and benefits have gone up over time, specifically even the benefits that are provided to employees have gone up. Insurance has gone up because there have been some loss ratio increases over time as well.
Yeah.
But I think the question is, and I think what Ms. Malden is already planning to do, is to look at how do we improve our revenue stream. So that may mean, looking at one-to-one match based on, the function. She's talked about doing enterprise funds with paratransit and maybe some of the other service categories. And I think that's going to actually help. So the revenues that support that specific service area will be used just for that service area versus spreading the revenue across the different areas. It'll help us track the expenses better, and then it also help shore up what revenue sources would be needed to fulfill the gaps. I can't answer the question on the county tax rate and why it's been the same for years, but I do know that historically, whatever's been adopted for the budget and the expenses by the board, that has varied from, as a minimum of 3% to 15% off mark. And so that, to me, is a sign that there needs to be more work done into, truing up the revenues and making sure that the revenue sources are going to be sufficient, but also balancing that with the expenditures. And so I think she has some great ideas in place on how she plans to do that. But I think that's the exercise that's going to happen in order to do that. Because again, we'll end up in this same position, whether it's COVID or some other, unexpected event, if we don't figure out what's the trigger for these expenses. I mean, obviously, people and benefits are the largest expense for any organization, but there are ways to mitigate it so it's not as much of a pressure on the overall budget.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Mulder. Before I let you ask the question, you spoke of some commissioners on here, and you wanted reference to the millage rate. Ms. Williams already said she couldn't give answer. So I'm asking if Commissioner Stone or Commissioner Odell, do y'all want to lend any color to that piece right there as far as the millage rate is concerned?
I'll be happy to.
Please.
I mean, certainly the commission relies on CAT to make a presentation about whether they think they need a millage increase or they do not think they need a millage increase. We did have one, about 3 years ago? Correct. It was a small one. But on that same note, I mean, the county is in the same boat as far as the cost of employees and benefits and COVID. So I think that it needs to be twofold. I mean, certainly look at the millage, but we also need to look within our own organization, because the county, the unincorporated area, was actually able to do a small millage rollback. So I think that it needs to be a whole comprehensive program as far as CAT goes. And I think Ms. Malden's already on that page. And looking at each department, how we can tighten our belt, what are the cost drivers and can they be mitigated? So, to simply just say, well, let's just do a millage increase, that's not the exact answer all the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Stone.
Can I respond to that, since
you asked,
commented to me?
I'm gonna let you let them respond, and then you got response to counteract against that, sir.
Go right ahead.
Commissioner Odell, you have the floor.
Yes, I'm not interested in looking at a millage increase at this time. I feel like what we really need to do is look at it, talking to the municipalities and expanding service so that the tax office can bill that increase on property taxes. And we approved on the county expanding to countywide services 3 years ago. And CAT hasn't even given us a plan on how to do that. And they say, well, they're waiting for us to bill it. We can't bill it until you get a plan. So I think there's a lot of things that CAT can do before we go to the constituents and ask for another millage increase. Right. I'm not even sure if the money was handled properly prior to now without us even asking for a millage increase. So I'm just not, I wouldn't support that.
Thank you, Commissioner Odell. Michael Halloran, you have the floor again.
Yeah, I went to a meeting in January with Mike Brown, who resigned, and Terry, who was our CFO. We sat down with County Manager Lee Smith, Mr. Kegler, and Linda, and we're told there will be no increase in the millage this year. You're going to get 1.15 because it's an election year. That was in January. We had not even submitted any information for approval by the county until April. We cut the budget 7 to 10% to cover that non-increase in the millage. Now, the millage was expanded countywide. No one else is paying, even though every municipality in the Chatham County area gets paratransit service. So they are receiving service that they're not paying for. None of them are paying the 1.15 millage because the county moved the payment of paratransit from the CAT revenue to maintenance and operation. Now, if that wasn't done, then they would have to pay, but they're not. No one else pays but CAT, Savannah, and the unincorporated parts of Chatham County. And that small part of Garden City that is in the tax district. No one else is paying countywide.
Paratransit is separate.
Separate from what? That's part of our operation. How is that separate?
Paratransit is separate from the millage rate because Chatham County pays it.
Point of order.
We pay that.
Point of order. Mike, let him finish, Commissioner Odell, and you can go ahead and counteract. Mike, you have the floor.
Yeah, I did. It's being paid out of a separate fund. It should be coming out of the transit tax district.
If it was coming out of the transit tax district, you'd be even shorter.
No, because every single household in entire Chatham County would be paying 1.15. That would be short.
Until because they've looked at it multiple times. CAT has to submit a plan for doing county-wide bus service in addition to paratransit. The Chatham area, the commission, Chatham County pays for paratransit. So they need to come up with a plan so that you can do countywide. And then they will bill the other municipalities that amount. The only plan.
So you want us to expand countywide with no extra money?
Was cutting.
How do we expand to the rest of the county without any money? You want to increase a year later?
It's not implementing. Where did the plan become an implementation procedure?
The CAT Act requires no opt-out from any community.
All right.
Only to pay.
We're going to put, okay, we got all that
You
subject.
can ask Ty that one because he wrote the CAT Act.
So Ty wrote the CAT Act.
Pretty much.
Okay.
You can ask him. I already have.
All right. So with that being said, I'm going to interject my point of conversation with that piece right there as a commissioner.
This isn't a commissioners meeting. This is a CAT meeting. And as chairman, you're a member of CAT.
When you brought up the subject that commissioners were on this call, you lend the conversation to me to defend myself as a commissioner. I would have not done so if you would have not said commissioners are on this call and they can answer that. You said that this is a recorded call.
That's
And
fine. I know the two people are on this call also that dumped the Veolia debt onto Cat, and that's Pete and Helen, but they don't
So-
seem to remember that point.
So with that being said, and you want to be disruptive, I will go ahead and bring my point as far as
Okay, every meeting I held, you cut me off and interjected, so get used to it. You did it to me for a year. So
Cool.
I'll mute myself and you can
Thank
explain
you. I
why we're way behind on money.
I appreciate that. In 2017, for the audience who's watching the recording, and for Ms. Malden, because you are new to this organization, Ms. Williams, because you have to find the numbers on this organization. In 2017, Chatham County extended the functions where we were countywide as far as being able to get services concerned. Our former CEO and our former chair, and I'm not talking about Dr. O'Halloran, were in position to go after these other municipalities to start collecting revenue. And it was told to me that they didn't want to go into certain places because they would not be able to collect the kind of revenue they needed to get. It was not about service expansion. It was about finding territories that had high profitability as far as tax collection is concerned. Now, this came from the previous CEO and the previous chair of this board. So we're going to talk about all things. We're going to talk about all things. We made it where CAT could go out there and talk to these other municipalities. Unfortunately, Chatham Area Transit did not go out there and talk to all the other municipalities. So before we go out there rambling saying that it's on Chatham County, we ourselves need to be an agency to be responsible to go out there and have these conversations with these other municipalities. Number one. Number two, it is hard for me in that capacity to approve any kind of millage rate increase when I had a former CEO who would never come to Chatham County meetings to give me a report. And we had asked him several times from the Chatham County perspective, come and give us a report. For 3 years, we did not get a report. For 3 years, we did not get a report. And it was plenty times where we were questioning of why we were considering millage rate increases when they were considering millage rate decreases. And so those board members who are on this thing right here fought hard in those rooms to make sure that 1.5 maintained as far as the millage rate was concerned. So when we go out here and say these other conversations on a recorded call, make sure you bring up all the conversations on a recorded call. You have the floor, Mike, and this is the last point of conversation we're going to have on this.
I can't correct what Curtis did, but we don't get to collect taxes, only the county does. So in order for us to extend service, we would need additional revenues to do that. So you have to collect it before you could spend it. No one wants the service because they don't want to pay the millage. That's what everybody told us.
That's not true.
Garden City doesn't want to pay it. Thunderbolt pulled out, but they're still getting paratransit. Vernonburg doesn't want it. Springfield doesn't want it. Garden City only wants it in that one small area. So what are we supposed to do if they don't want it?
Are you finished, sir?
Yeah. I spoke to 2 of them.
Clinton, give me just a second. I have documentation to prove that some of those municipalities did want the service. It was the fact that nobody had true conversation with them about the service and how we could expand the service in those areas. I know for a fact Garden City had an opportunity where they would have been able to pay for certain services in other areas outside of the area that we're already providing service. The other point that I want to do before we close this out is Ms. Malden will tell you that one of my main concerns that I had conversation with her is this is an election year, just like you spoke of. This is an election year, and we do not know who will be on the county commission. And you might have a county commission that may roll you back down to 0% on the millage rate. And I instructed Ms. Malden, I said, Ms. Malden, you need to make sure you look at the numbers and look at the books to show that we don't depend on the county or any other resource out there. We need to become closer to becoming an agency that moves forward with our own thought process and procedures. And a lot of that has to do, make sure we stay good with the federal government, the state government, and local government, not just local government and depending solely on that millage rate. Ms. Malden, you have the floor, then we're gonna go to Mr. Edminster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to just add a little context in terms of what we've been doing to try to move forward as an agency. Shortly after my tenure started, we did go before the county commission and we started to do an introductory meeting. To follow up with that, we actually have a meeting scheduled for this afternoon with the county manager's office to bring them up to date on what our current financial situation is. We believe that we will be able to move forward on more solid ground as long as we're able to speak transparently about what our financial situation is. We appreciate Ms. Williams and her efforts to help us understand at a baseline where we are today. So in understanding where we are today, we're able to formulate a plan so that we can move forward. We are tightening our belt. We are leaving no stone unturned. And we are absolutely going to do everything that we can to ensure that this agency is moving forward in the best way possible. We believe that if we do this correctly, we'll be able to emerge even from this pandemic. We might be a little leaner and meaner, but we'll be more fiscally sound and better equipped to handle anything that life throws at this agency moving forward. Stakeholder development is a big part of that plan. You referenced Garden City. And I've talked to Director Cody. We've already had conversations about going to visit with Garden City as well. I've already met with Mayor Johnson with the city of Savannah, and he even pledged his support to help me in terms of going out to other municipalities. And so we remain very encouraged about our ability to eventually expand countywide. There are a lot of things that have to go into that implementation plan. So of course, I'm not prepared to speak to that at this juncture, but please rest assured that we are working on it as a staff and that we will be coming back before you all very soon with some recommendations for how we would like to move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Malden. Director Edminster, you have the floor. Close us out, please.
Great. Right now we're talking about our finances.
Correct.
I mean, there's a lot of changes going on, not only with the pandemic, but also just institutional changes at CAT, leadership changes as well. We're seeing political changes. And I think Ms. Malden has a very good plan in place right now to find our baseline. I believe there, I mean, everything, I mean, I don't think it's impacted me enough how much of an impact even the policy on how to make policies will affect, you know, the next many decades of how this organization operates. And that's just one small part of kind of recreating the foundation of Chatham area transit right now. I think, again, that line of finding the baseline financially, from an operations standpoint, from a service standpoint, is going to be critical so that we can make the most informed decisions moving forwards. There are a lot of changes to make, not only in how we provide service and where we provide service, but how we do insurance. You know, I think I bring up every time we talk about insurance, just the rising cost of insurance going up at 10 to 12%. You know, compare that to our limited millage, not our millage rate increase, but the increase in the taxable land in Chatham County. As that increases in value, we do see more revenue in that, but it's not in any way comparison to the increases in expenses. So we kind of really need to sit down, I think, and have some very creative budget workshops with the whole board, with some stakeholders, with our executive staff, to figure out how we are going to navigate this forward. I'd love to do that in person, but just because I feel like we kind of need to do it like that, but we are in a pandemic. And then also, I mean, I just think the transit is an active infrastructure, and unlike water pipes or roads where you lay them into the ground and they're kind of, you know, pretty much there and untouched, transit is an expensive and active infrastructure that is completely tied to the area that we serve. And as we bring in more land, like the rest of Chatham County, we also bring in more expenses. And so these are all conversations that we need to have moving forwards. But right now, what I think we should focus on, and what I really appreciated Ms. Malden helping us focus on, is finding our baseline and cleaning up some of the policies and procedures we've got. I guess that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Let's move forward into executive session. Can I get a motion on that, please?
Miss Williams had her hand up.
Ms. Jeray Williams?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I got the message that you have an answer on this piece right here, but what I
I
want,
do, and I'm sorry, it'll be quick and you can close this out, but I just wanted to answer Director O'Halloran's question about the $1 million over the last 6 years.
yes,
If
go
that's
ahead.
okay. Okay, so the aggregate losses over the last 6 years were $16 million. So that $1 million or the $6.6 million that you're referencing that was made in payment, that was only a small portion of that.
All right, and it was, and what I want to do is, Beverly, when we do the transaction, is whatever we call it, when we do this right here, all those questions that Dr. O'Halloran was mentioning and everybody else was mentioning in conversation, let's make sure we pull that out and let's make sure we do a thorough research in as far as how that helps us as an agency, and share that with all the directors so we can have a better clue of what he was describing. Not saying that what he was saying was good or bad or indifferent. It's just we want to make sure that we have correct documentation tied to what we're talking about as an organization is concerned. All right, with that being said, we're moving into executive session. Get a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved by Director
Second.
and seconded by Director Leggett. And we'll just do a hand motion to all those in favor by saying aye or hand. Any opposed have the same right. All right, Pete, are you okay with us moving to executive session? Pete,
Director Lukakis?
Director
Yes.
Lukakis. Thank you. Are you okay with us moving to executive session, sir? Director Lukakis, are you okay with us moving into executive session? Director Lukakis, do you hear me?
Yes.
Are you okay with us
Well,
moving to executive
what
session?
the problem is, this telephone at Verizon, they're going to see about getting me another phone too with this situation, because it just drops out.
All right, did you hear, we're gonna move into executive session. Are you okay with that?
Wait a minute, repeat that?
We're going to in executive session. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion moves, and let's move into executive session, Ms. Beverly.
Hold tight right there, Director Lukakis. We're gonna move.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
look, you need to announce the purpose of the executive session.
Session. The executive session is for personnel matters. Am I correct, Ms. Malden?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Butler, Attorney Butler.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll meet you in 60 seconds.
And we're coming out of executive session. We're waiting for Beverly to confirm if she's back on and we have everybody back into session.
I think I was able to bring everyone back in together, Mr. Chairman.
I don't see Mr. Lakaka. There he goes. I see him now. All right, can you do a quick roll call? Just want to make sure everybody knows out here in the world, we did not have any votes taken in the executive session. It was just pure discussion in reference to the personnel matters within Chatham Area Transit. Can you do a roll call for me?
Yes, sir. Dr. O'Halloran. Dr. O'Halloran. Director Cody.
Present.
Director Emister.
Present.
Director Leggett.
Present.
Director Lakakis.
Yes.
Dr. Robinson.
Present.
Director Stone. Director Stone.
You're on mute.
Present.
Youth Director Odell.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
I'm present.
Thank
And
you.
Dr. Arhan, did you catch Dr. Halloran? I do see his screen present.
I see a screen, but I did not get a present vote for him.
Yeah, I'm here. I needed a break.
All right, thank you. All right, with that being said, we're going into old business, recommendation of service reduction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Williams, if you're going to, are you going to drive for me on this one? Or are you Beverly?
Beverly has it.
Okay. All right, Ms. Dumas, I'm ready whenever you are. So last month during the special, well, sorry, maybe it was earlier this month during the special call meeting, I presented 5 options for service recommendations that we would consider because of the ridership decline as well as the financial implications associated with continuing the service as it is currently running today. And so I want to circle back around and identify the options that I am currently digging deeper into. And these are changing constantly. I think that I've made some additional revelations even since narrowing down the focus. Ms. Dumas, are you sharing your screen?
Yes,
You're on.
ma'am, I am. I'm getting there, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And if you'll go to the next slide. All right, so if you'll recall, this was the action plan that we presented at the special call meeting in terms of how we're going to right size our expenses. Of course, they included salary reductions for the administrative staff, includes furloughs for the administrative staffs of up to 5 weeks, potential layoff packages, retirement packages for those who are eligible, and of course, service reductions. Next slide. And you all have seen those before. That was just showing that those items are still pending. So this is the comparison chart that I presented to you at the special call meeting. The only difference is I've highlighted 2 options. Our staff has met extensively and weighed the pros and cons of the options that we initially came up with. And we're actually looking at making a reduction of service to the Holiday Plus, which would be the holiday levels of service, with the exception of our 2 highest performing routes, which are the 14 as well as the number 20. Those 2 lines would actually remain at full service. And actually, we're even now looking at how we can put even more service on the 14. So the impact may not be as high as what was previously shown in the chart because we're now calculating how much additional service we can offer to the 14. I know that Director Edminster contacted me earlier this month about calls that he got about the number 14, and I get a lot of inquiries about, can we have more service on the 14? So we are looking to possibly add additional service on that line. With option 5, it's temporarily suspending Sunday service, and it would only be a temporary suspension of that service. We believe that a reset day, if you will, would be a good investment of time and resources on Sunday. The churches overall have not gone back into Sunday service, and it would really be good to have a day to do even deeper cleaning of our buses and of our facilities. As the COVID levels continue to increase, we want to make sure that we're increasing our efforts as well to make sure that our buses are safe for all of the public that utilizes our bus, as well as for the well-being of our employees as well. So I just wanted to circle back around again to you to let you all know that what it is that we are recommending to the board, or what the direction we're talking about looking at. And I will continue to update you all along the way. But I promised again to come back at this meeting with what our actual recommendation is. And so I can actually take any questions that you all may have about that at this time. Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I can't, until y'all take the screen down, I can't see who has questions. All right. With that, any questions? I see Director Stone's hand up. You got the floor, Director Stone.
Maybe I missed something, but what are we doing about the airport shuttle?
That is next on the agenda.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Next on the agenda.
Sorry, I apologize.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else have any additional questions? All right, without seeing any questions, our next item on the agenda is the 100X Airport Shuttle update.
Okay, and Commissioner Stone, because of the discussion that was held during last month's board meeting, we immediately commissioned a task force of staff to further investigate the airport shuttle and to come up with a series of recommendations. The full report is actually included in your board packet, but I have asked Ms. Brenda Dice, our grant administrator, but former planning manager, who actually led the charge along with Mr. Dumas, to give a brief presentation about the airport shuttle. So I think that task force was actually a three-way effort of Ms. Dice, Ms. Patricia Moorhead, as well as Mr. Dumas.
It was, and we also had planning staff included in that team. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see what the presentation that I prepared for you. Just one second.
Okay.
There we go. Great. So as Ms. Malden alluded to, she just said the 100 airport shuttle was requested that we analyze the route and give some recommendations. We built this task force, and currently, as y'all know, the route stops at just a couple locations there in downtown, which are the ITC and some other hotels, and runs Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sunday from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. We did have the fees associated with this have been temporarily suspended, as you know, but when we were charging fees, we charged $5 for one-way tickets and $8 for a round trip ticket. And just to give you an idea as to what our hourly usage looks like now, you can see February and July. So that's before COVID. And then after we came back into service in July, you can see there that we have some peaks in the mid-morning around 11 a.m., then another little peak at 1 p.m.-ish and one at 5. You can see that our lowest time of the day is around noon. And we believe that those correspond with flights that are leaving or inbound at the airport. And then we looked at cost. We reviewed cost since this route was initiated in the fall of 2013. You can see there we analyzed the average cost per month by fiscal year, but we also looked at the average cost per passenger and the total annual cost. So the highest amounts you see are from FY15, 16, and 17. And after FY17, we reduced our time frame that we were running this route, and then brought our route cost down annually. They're an 18 to 328,500 approximately. So we've got asterisks, as you notice, on FY14 and FY20, which were partial years. FY14 because that was the new, it was a new route, and FY20 because in April and May of this year we did not have service. We also had partial months in March and June of FY20, and I actually did for you on page 4. You can see that if we had taken out the months of March and June because of COVID, our calculations would be about $37.09 per passenger and about $29,054.75 per month. So we did decrease our costs in the last 2 years. If you add in that calculation of removing those partial months.
8807. That's 800-678-8807. And
Commissioner Odell, you go ahead and mute yourself.
So as you flip through the analysis, you can see on page 4, we looked at our alternatives, and here they are for you on a slide. Our first alternative is to eliminate the Airport 100X and service the airport with local Route 3, which is the West Chatham route. West Chatham route currently travels down I-16 and could be extended into the airport for pickup and drop off. It runs from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and currently has a run time of approximately 111 minutes. So if we were to eliminate the Airport 100X and increase service on the Route 3, the time per passenger would increase to about 79 minutes to get from downtown to the airport. And that's significant because right now on the airport shuttle, we have about a 25-minute time frame to get from downtown to the airport. It would also reduce the cost because obviously we wouldn't be running the 100X anymore. So it would reduce the cost by $347,000 annually, but increase that Route 3 West Chatham by about $50,000 a year. So that gives you a net decrease of approximately $297,000 annually. Option 2 is to reduce service on the 100X. We looked at those hourly charts and when the flights are coming in and out of the airport, when folks are using our 100X route, and certainly it can, we talked about the peaks being at 11 a.m., 1 p.m., and 5 p.m. And so if we were to reduce the service to say 10 to 2 and 4 to 6, instead of that full 10 to 6 time frame, we could reduce annual costs by approximately $186,000. We could reduce annual costs to approximately $186,000, which would be a reduction of approximately $161,000 annually. For option 3, remarketing the Airport 100X, In December, the board requested and received a marketing plan from the service delivery department, and also what current marketing exists for the airport shuttle, and you have that at the back of your packet, at the back of this report. We could continue to remarket the Airport 100X and looking at right sizing the vehicle to a smaller option, perhaps a van. It could be vinyl wrapped for marketing purposes. Keeping in mind this option would cost less and use less fuel to maintain. However, smaller vehicles do have a shorter lifespan, so the total cost has not yet been calculated for that option. Option 4 is transforming the Airport 100X into an on-demand service. There are, in multiple cities around the world, but certainly the US, there are on-demand services that service the airport and the downtown areas. It could become an on-demand service hitting the ITC as well as downtown lodging properties. Passengers would book a ride online or via an app and be grouped with other passengers headed in the same direction. There may be a few stops along the way, so it may be a little bit longer than the 25 minutes that they've got now with an express shuttle, but certainly other communities have made it work, and there are several options that we could do in-house, or we could partner with a contracted service, as there are multiple companies that specialize in this type of service. Again, because of the options involved in that option, additional research is needed to determine a cost. Option 5 that we looked at was to expand the 100X airport route. During the Let's Go initiative, the conversation got to the airport shuttle, and we had several folks give us feedback about wanting service to the Tanger outlets and to the medical complex that was recently built there along Pooler Parkway. So if we were to expand the airport service and loop to those 3 locations, we think we would get a pretty substantial increase in ridership. The problem there is that both of those locations, Tanger outlets, as well as that medical complex, are located in the city of Pooler and currently outside of Chatham County's transit district. I know we've talked about that a little bit today. And then option 6 is to temporarily suspend service for the airport shuttle. During the coronavirus, we've talked about, as y'all know, the declines in ridership and the need to decrease our spending. And so temporarily suspending the Airport 100X would reduce costs and help prevent a potential operating shortfall. This option would be, as well as several other options, we would recommend, if it was chosen, that it happened during a board change, and that it also would require Title VI analysis, which we've been keeping in the back of our mind. We're ready for that. So you see at the bottom, staff recommendation. Our task force recommends that we go with option 6, which is temporarily suspending service for the Airport 100X, and further researching options 4 and 5, the transformation of the route into an on-demand service and the expansion into the city of Pooler. That's a lot of information I've given you. Please let me know if you have questions for me.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Jay, am I good to go?
Hold tight, please. All right, yes, sir. Go ahead, Clinton.
Thank you. So looking at the July graph that you showed for July 2020, it said that there was 30 people writing it in all of July around 11 o'clock, which makes me think that that's about 1 person every day on average. Am I close?
That one was June, I
June,
believe.
July.
But I'm looking at the ridership data. It's one or two people, yes.
Yeah, that's just phenomenally low, which makes sense. I mean, like airplane traffic itself has just crashed. Maybe that's a bad word to use, has gone down significantly. So one thing, you know, that I'd be kind of interested in knowing is, you know, if there's only one person on there, we can probably get a good idea of who that person is. You know, I'd be interested to know, are they traveling or are they working there? Are they getting a ride to the airport and then walking a mile into Pooler? You know, I think that might be kind of interesting to try to figure out who's actually riding on there. I'm all for the option you guys are recommending to temporarily limit it, or to temporarily halt it, and then to look at other options. I think it would make sense to look at the 100X the same way that we look at the ferry. If the goal of the 100X is to move people, is for a goal of is a goal for tourism and hospitality, then it may make sense for us to try to find other partners who want to help us pay for it, including the airport itself. I'm not sure if that's possible at all, but I think this might be a good idea or a good way for us to expand the stakeholders for this particular route. Yeah, it just seems odd to me that, and it has for a while, that that taxpayers in Chatham County or taxpayers in the service district are paying for something that is specifically used just as the airport, or just for the connections to the airport, without the airport incurring any of those costs. And I'm not sure if I'm totally off the mark there, but who knows? That's all I got.
All right. Any other directors have any comments? All right. Michael Holleran, and then Ms. Molden, and then Ms. Moorhead, in that order.
Yeah, I agree with Clinton. I don't know how we can incur these kind of costs when we're basically running a service for both the airport and the hotels in town. Every city I go to, the airport either provides a shuttle or the hotel sends a shuttle out to pick you up. Why are we doing it? We're incurring the liability in case anybody's injured or someone gets killed on our shuttle because we're the insured. We could pay a fortune in cost to bring a tourist from the airport to Savannah to stay at the hotel and spend $150 a night. I don't see where that we basically ride around the 6 hotels, pick up people, ride out to the airport, sit out there, turn around, ride back, drive by the 6 hotels again. And we don't benefit at all from that other than tying up a driver, a vehicle, and liability insurance. So yeah, the other stakeholders should be paying for this. If it's $300,000 a year, those 7 companies can pay $40,000 a year and get their own shuttle service. I mean, the Westin is paying $50,000 a year just to have an extra hour added to bring their employees over before we bring anybody else over. So and you know, it's predominantly benefiting only the city of Savannah. The other taxpayers are not getting any benefit from the airport shuttle. I'm in Georgetown. It doesn't pick me up to take me to the airport. I got to either drive myself or arrange for private transport. So I think we really need to rethink it, and I'm fine with suspending it, but I think we should eliminate it totally, but that's just me.
All
I'm
right.
done.
Anybody else got any commentary? Director Stone, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. This is very helpful. I applaud the recommendation. I'm all for suspending it now, but I do think we ought to look at the other options. It doesn't mean we have to approve them. But seeing a large bus the other day ride out I-16, and I'm gonna say it was like 2 o'clock with not a soul on it, really worried me.
Any other directors? All right, Ms. Molden, you have the floor.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going back to something that I said quite frequently, even during my interview process, a 40-foot bus on a fixed route may not be the answer to all of the region's mobility issues. And this program actually provides us with one opportunity to score. The R in SCORE is for Reimagine Transit in Chatham County. And so looking at the airport shuttle gives us the opportunity to reimagine what kind of service would really serve this area better. We've already made inroads with the tourism community. I currently sit on the SAMI board with the convention center. And so I've already started engaging those folks in conversations about how we can all work together collectively to make transit better. So I think suspending the service temporarily will allow us to kind of catch our breath, so to speak, from a cost perspective, but it also gives us the latitude to really give some good thought to how we can up the ante, so to speak, and provide the kind of service that this region would benefit from. I do believe that once the world opens up, people are going to be dying to travel, so to speak. And I think that tourism, I mean, the stats already show that hotels are at 80% occupancy on the weekends right now with COVID in full effect. So if the hotels are at 80% occupancy now, can you imagine what that'll be like once the world really opens up? And so it's a real opportunity. I would really hate to see the agency just count itself out of potentially bringing in revenue in that respect. You know, there was a service called Super Shuttle that operates out of many airports, and Super Shuttle, whether people know it or not, was actually operated by First Transit. And so there are other agencies. There's a model for best practices for airport shuttles in lots of forms, whether they're on demand, whether there's a BRT project. There are just a lot of ways that we can look at this and actually use this as an opportunity that we can capitalize on and try to involve as many partners as possible to make it a reality.
All right, thank you.
Director Jones, I got one more thing.
Before I let you go out, Ms. Moorhead had her hand up. I want to make sure I acknowledge her and then I'll come back to redirect to you. Yes, Ms. Moorhead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo what Ms. Malden said and let you all know that I appreciate it. The opportunity for our team to get together for this task force, to really look at the statistics, to look at the cost and explore other options for this service. And so just thank you for allowing the staff, allowing us to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Moorhead. Mr. Edminster, you director.
I'll keep this real quick. Yes, I'd also like to echo this. Suspending it now would give us a lot of, I know we've got a lot on our plate right now, but would give us a good opportunity to reimagine the whole thing. The name 100X, what does that mean? The route, you know, why does it go to the visitor center? Could it maybe somehow connect with the DOT shuttle when that turns back on? Is this a conversation that we could bring to the SAMI board to get some support for it? I definitely see the importance of having a low-cost option for getting to and from downtown to the airport. I just think that having it all on CAT's plate is to the disadvantage of the service itself. And I would like to see it reimagined to better do its goal.
All right, thank you, leader. All right, thank you, Director Edminster. Anybody else have anything else? All right. Well, my only comment toward that, Ms. Malden, I hope that you make the best decision as far as the agency is concerned. This is the decision that the CEO, along with the executive staff, will be making. So we hope that you make the best decision based on what was actually introduced and brought as far as our directors are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last item on the agenda, the board officer election, and this is an item that has been heavily discussed in the last couple of weeks, and I am looking for to entertain any motions as far as board officer elections within regards to the chairmanship. Dr. Halloran, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to nominate Clinton as new chairman so he can work with you over the next 4 months and learn the system.
Okay, it's been properly motioned. Are we looking for a second?
Seconds aren't required on nominations.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I nominate Dietrich Cody. Chairman.
All right. So we have 2 nominations on the floor. Are there any other nominations on the floor?
I'm sorry, I walked away. Say that again.
Nominations for chair.
No, I got the floor, Dietrich, please. Nominations for chair.
Who got
The nominations thus far have been Michael Halloran nominated Clinton Edminster, and Dietrich Leggett nominated himself.
No,
Jay,
I
can
nominated
you-
Dietrich Cody.
I apologize. Dietrich Leggett nominated Dietrich Cody. I apologize. Are there any other nominations on the floor?
Can there be discussion-ish?
No.
Yeah.
I'll move. Without any other nominations, I move that we close the nominations on the floor. All right. Now, with Mr. Edminster, you can go ahead and discuss on the preview of you've been nominated. You want to give any latitude as far as accepting the nomination or anything like that? You can talk now.
Yeah, I had a good time working with you and Dr. Robinson on the CEO search, and I would be interested to see if other board members would be interested in having any 3 of us in those positions. I guess both as chairman or chairperson and vice chairperson.
All right.
I'm down to do what's best for the board. If that means being chair, that's fine with me. If that means being vice chair, if that means being neither of those things, I'm fine with any of those.
All right. So you accept the nomination or you reject the nomination, sir?
I'll accept the nomination.
All right. Thank you.
But I'm
Mr.
not going to
Cody.
fight for it.
I got you.
Tell
Mr.
you
Cody,
that.
you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I want to accept the nomination also, and what I project is to make CAT function on a much greater level. I think that we have the pieces in place now to put it all together, to come together as one, which I think is the most important thing that we can be focusing on. And I just want to say thank you again.
All right. So both nominations have been accepted. All right. Are we going to do, I guess we're going to have to do it face to face. Everybody sees it.
I would, I'll reject my nomination.
All right. Now we still have to, so you're rejecting the nomination. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Edminster. So we only have 1 nomination on the floor now, Dietrich Cody. We still have
No
to.
vote required then.
I have to look into that to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. I looked at it this morning. If there's only 1 nominee, they automatically get the position. There's no vote. You can't vote for nobody.
No, you still have to have an agreement of the board.
You can ask Ty. I don't think so. I think it's automatic.
Ty, is that correct?
Well, I haven't researched that lately, but I think the board needs to approve.
What if we don't approve them?
Each board member would at least have the option to vote no, and then you would go back to the nomination.
I agree. But I'm glad you asked Ty to answer that question. Ty just answered your question. Sir, you have anything else you want to lend, sir?
Who, me?
Yes, sir.
No, I think he's wrong, but that's okay.
All right. Well,
As I said, I haven't researched.
Well, Ty, I'm just going to explain it like this. We were just stating the fact that in previous meetings that we had to have the chair voted in. And now we're stating in previous meetings, and I know for a fact, in previous chair situations, we all voted on it. It was not just somebody who got pushed into the position. So now what we're saying is in previous meetings, we never voted on these things when it came to it. And in both chairman situations, the last 2 chairmen were both voted into the situations and they ran unopposed. So with that being stated, can we get a roll call vote, please, Beverly?
Yes, sir. Okay.
And this roll call vote, and let me go ahead and clarify for you, Beverly, so you understand what you think. This roll call vote is to accept Dietrich Cody as the next chairman of Chatham Area Transit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that clarification. Okay, Dr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Dr. O'Halloran,
Yes.
Director Cody,
Yes.
Director Emerson,
Yes.
Director Leggett,
Yes.
Director Lukakis,
Yes.
Dr. Robinson, Dr. Robinson. I think she's frozen again. Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Odell,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
I firmly say yes for Director Cody.
Thank you. I did not get a vote from Dr. Robinson. I think her internet is down.
All right,
or
but we
it's
do have
frozen.
enough, of a vote to carry the motion.
Yes,
and
sir, we do.
Recognize the fact that Dr. Robinson was not present on the vote. It will be, go ahead and say what you're supposed to say first.
Yes, sir. The motion has passed
Right.
for Director Cody to take
With
on
that being
chairmanship.
stated, I appreciate it. Let's give our new board chair, Director Cody, a hand, please, because we got a new board chair. I will do everything I possibly can to make sure for the next couple of months I remain on this board to help Director Cody, Chairman Cody, assume the responsibilities of the organization and make sure it's a smooth transition between me and him moving forward. I hope that we can put our settled differences aside as board members and directors or whatever we want to call ourselves and support Director Cody in the advancement of what he does moving forward. At this time, we don't have any new business. And prior to me turning the manor over, Director Cody, you have my full support. Anything you need from me, please let me know. I am going back to my vice chair position where I can sit quietly and watch y'all move for the next couple of months. I would not say that I will not be helping you, Mr. Cody, but I am going to make sure that you do the job that we need done for our transit system. With that being said, I motion.
Quick question before we should actually vote for the board secretary to reappoint Beverly, since we held an election today.
Ty, please interject on what he's talking about, because I have not heard this one before.
The CAT Enabling Act provides for 2 officers. The chairman, it doesn't mention the vice chairman. And it also provides for a secretary treasurer. You know, it's up to the board if they want to take a new vote on secretary treasurer, or she can remain in place until the next full election takes place.
I figured she can remain in place, but
I wanted to remain in place. I just wanted to make it official.
I mean, I thought it was already official. The carry of title doesn't change that whole thing in the motion, but Ty just stated that it can stay in play. I don't see the reason why.
Oh, I'm fine with Beverly staying as board secretary. Believe me, she was a valuable asset for me.
All right. So I motion for this meeting to be adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, before you finish your motion, please. Mr. Chairman.
I'm listening, brother.
That's Dietrich now.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Before we leave, I just want to acknowledge and thank everybody for coming out to Commissioner to Commissioner's funeral, to Coach's funeral over the weekend. And also, I just wanted to make sure that we keep the prayers of our CEO's family in our thoughts, because there's a storm coming in the direction of where her family is. And also a prayer for the wife of our coach also, because she's going to take on the role of county commission, second district.
Thank you for reminding me on that, Dietrich. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I had it in my head and I lost train of thought to it, but I do appreciate that. Thanks for keeping me on task, sir. All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Maybe I should have did it that way. And we're just gonna put it on the agenda for Cody so he can just say it off the agenda. All right. Without anything being said, I motion for this meeting to be adjourned the 3rd time. Motion for adjournment. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Bye.
thank you. 12:51. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Take care.